Hey everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Paul Johnson. We are the Last Nighters. You can find us at the Liberty Movement's YouTube channel and also at lastnighters.com. This is episode 200. It's a little bit of a celebratory number, I guess you could say. And so we're going to have a guest who is a special treat. He has satirically been on here, or this is a satirical appearance of him on the show. And his alter ego has been on here before, also known as the Professional Asshole. But tonight, he is identifying as Alec Jones, and he has been on a number of times in the past. Alec, welcome back to the show. I'm gonna actually list the shows you've been on before: Professor Madman, Russia with Love, Edge of Darkness, Legends of the Fall, The Last Jedi, Planes, Trains, Automobiles, and 310 to Yuma. Welcome back to the show, Alec.
Guys, I really appreciate having me on. It's really great to be back. For anybody who doesn't know, I am Alex's significantly more based and red-pilled twin brother. He's a great guy. He watches tranny porn on occasion, but we won't fault him for that. He just got subject. He was worn down by the globalists. They kept on coming after him, and he couldn't resist it for long. And thankfully, I have been able to resist it. I've been a light in a dark place for my brother, and he's a great guy. But don't give him your phone.
All right. And in honor of Obi-Wan Kenobi being in this film tonight, I would say the satire is strong with this one, Robert, wouldn't you say?
Yes, indeed. I'm enjoying this. As a former many-year listener of your based, not so based twin brother, it's great to have you on. I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to Alex.
With the X
in the past like 15 years or so, but for a while there, I was enjoying a lot of his stuff, and of course, I followed his trials and tribulations these past few years with his being ejected from social media, and then also losing his lawsuit for the Sandy Hook thing. It's all been quite disappointing.
Yeah, have you seen his Rogan and Tim Pool appearances? He's actually been on those a few times, and they are pretty enlightening, and I think opening up a lot of eyes. There's a bit of an awakening, I think, happening.
Oh yeah, Rogan's audience isn't just the toxic masculinity incel community that the left likes to paint him as. He has a huge audience, and it goes across. It's a broad spectrum kind of a thing, with all the different topics he covers. And having Alex on, for a media that just demonizes him all day long, as he's just like the most dangerous person in the world, you get him on there, and he's nothing of the sort.
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed my appearance with Malice on Tim Pool, and obviously we met each other through Rogan. And contrary to what anybody will tell you, I mean, there's a particularly podcast host that likes to, go to bat for Malice, say he's not gay. He 100% is. I mean, he 100% is. He was really coming after me and my masculinity. I've been really up in the dose of Superman vitality lately, and he was coming after me. I was shocked, but as I understand, I mean, I'm a red-blooded American male. I don't take any of the I'll take any of the fake chemicals they put out there. Stay away from tap water. So it's kind of only natural for a guy like him to come after me. But I don't fault him any. I don't fault him. But he did come after me. He's definitely gay.
All right, so I just want to point out that this show is entirely for entertainment purposes. Pure satire. In fact, every episode, Robert, I think you'd agree, it's mostly for ham-fisted entertainment. Emphasis on
I mean, yeah, mild entertainment. I wouldn't give us too much credit. Try.
All right.
You're probably the most entertaining podcast I'm aware of. I mean, really, honestly, you guys are the best.
I appreciate that. No, he's not aware of much. He lives in the cave.
That's true. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little retarded.
He's got us on the Lifetime channel. That's all you got.
Well, I'm glad that you're back with us, and all your prior appearances were a lot of fun, and I highly recommend them if people haven't heard them before. So we'll have those listed on the show notes page at lastnighters.com/200. There's also plenty of bonus content available for people if they go to our Patreon. Go to lastnighters.com/Patreon. Send some money our way, Federal Reserve notes, for as long as they're still worth anything, and we'll send you additional access to all sorts of good stuff. So with that, I think we're going to get underway here. And Robert, I want to have you cue up your noises there. 1, 2, 3. What are we talking about tonight? Dr. Sleep. That's right. Okay, so how we start this off is with the old.
That's
Google
the death breath, by the way. I'm curious. Death breath. That's
right. It's so good you had to tell people what it was.
That's right.
All right. So Dr. Sleep, rated R, 2019 thriller / psychological horror film. 2 hours and 32 minutes in the theatrical cut. However, there is a director's cut, which adds another roughly half hour, so it makes it a 3-hour movie. I actually ended up watching both versions, and so I have a few things to say. This came out 2019, as we said. 7.3 out of 10 on that IMDb, 78% Rotten Tomatoes, 59% Metacritic, and 87% of Google users like it. The description reads, struggling with alcoholism, Dan Torrance remains traumatized by the sinister events that occurred at the Overlook Hotel when he was a child. His hope for a peaceful existence soon becomes shattered when he meets Abra, a teen who shares his extrasensory gift of the shine. Together, they form an unlikely alliance to battle the True Knot, a cult whose members try to feed off the shine of innocence to become immortal, also known as adrenochrome. Came out November 8th, 2019, directed by Mike Flanagan, and has a box office of $72.3 million, which apparently was lower than expected, especially with decent critical reviews, and blamed on the length and the limited number of showings you can have in a day because of the length of the film. It's adapted from the novel, which was a sequel to The Shining by Stephen King, called Dr. Sleep. This is starring Obi-Wan Kenobi, among some lookalikes from the original cast of The Shining. So, Robert, let's go to you for your opening breath on Dr. Sleep.
Well, as you know, Daniel, I famously dislike The Shining and correctly dislike The Shining. Thank you very much. And I told you about this film when I just stumbled across it one day. I think it was like on HBO or something in 2019. And I had a great time with it. And I was like, what is this? How come I'd never heard of it? First of all. And second of all, why is it good? And I maybe it didn't make enough money because of the lack of marketing, or maybe I was just under a rock at the time. I don't know. But I had a great time with this film. I'm surprised to hear that you and our guest also enjoyed this film. Being such shining purists, this movie is such a departure in tone and structure and form from the original movie. This movie is more like kind of an action-y type movie mixed with like an X-Files episode. And I really enjoyed it. The cast is excellent. Obi-Wan, you get to know his character a lot. That's one thing that the original Shining movie failed flat on its face, is having likable characters and getting to know those characters. And this movie didn't do that at all. It actually showed people, you got to know them, you get to show how much they cared about each other. The only thing, I mean, maybe the movie probably had to trim some time. I think where he makes his best friend, the Alcoholic Anonymous friend guy, maybe he commits a little bit too easily to Dan's crazy mission in the film. Maybe that was left on the cutting room floor. Maybe that's in the director's cut. I don't know. But that felt a little bit too easy to go, oh, by the way, we're just going to have this conversation behind a closed door, and you're just going to have to, as the audience, believe that it was really persuasive or something like that. Maybe he showed him, but I don't think he did. But it's a fun time. It's a very standard plot Hollywood type movie. Like, it has a big showdown at the end. There's even a shootout, which is kind of surprising. I was surprised, but I was just like, well, let's just get some rifles and we'll just shoot these guys. It's like,
That's the
okay.
plan.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty good plan, especially when they're just going to stand there out in the open and then fire back with revolvers and pistols when you're hiding behind a tree from like 50 yards away. I think they're going to be, that's just like a turkey shoot. I mean, eventually they do seek some cover and whatnot, but I would think that, if you're like these really, really long-lived psychic vampires, maybe you've developed some skills in the time you've been alive. I do like the idea that they said that they were rich and well connected, because that's one thing that the vampires in the Lestat, the Anne Rice movies, they do really well. It's like they've been around for hundreds and thousands of years, not hundreds of thousands, but hundreds and thousands of years, and they've had time to build wealth and establish many connections. And if you're going to go at these people, you're going to have to go at them fairly directly.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of like Groundhog Day, where Bill Murray repeats the same day over and over again, so he gets like super good at everything.
Yeah,
they've been around.
Like
that
you
long.
would have so many talents and hobbies that you would just be amazing at if you're that long lived. I mean, we don't get an exact date as to how long the Mrs. Hat lady has been around,
Rose,
or the other people, but the one guy, the old guy, is said to have been around since Roman times. So you would think, I mean, even though he dies during the film just from old age, apparently.
Well, and the lack of fresh steam, fresh children blood.
But he just got some fresh steam.
Yeah, it gets a little muddy there, right? Like they got that baseball kid, and he was supposed to be pretty shiny.
Yeah.
But apparently that's like the best of what's left. So the overall degradation.
So the whole world is kind of falling. Yeah, she did talk about, the hat lady talked about, or the crow guy said, like, well, I don't know if it's Netflix or social media or whatever, but these kids aren't as shiny as they used to be. It's kind of a dig at modern entertainment, I suppose. But still, we get the idea that these people are very, very old. And it would have been nice to have seen some skills and abilities that these people would have gotten over the centuries, as opposed to, I'm just going to...
supernatural skills, but more like practical.
Just anything. Tactical, whatever. Like, you've been around for hundreds of years, and you're just going to pull out a pistol when somebody's got a rifle at 50 yards? Maybe you've come up with something to deal with different situations. I don't know. Or just even had skills or talents. Like, they kind of looked like a circus. Mm-hmm. Maybe even have some kind of acrobatic abilities or something. I don't know. But
that would attract the kids too,
There you go. See? Yeah, traveling circus. And then you got kids just coming to you.
Rose kind of does do that at the beginning when she has the magic trick.
She does. Yeah. She does in the Florida with the Violet Girl. That's true. I mean, that's true.
The reason I reached out to you guys like a year ago with this is because obviously, I've been saying for 25 years that we are ruled by a satanic group of interdimensional psychic vampires who feed on the despair, especially of people in general, but especially of the children. And they that's why all the elites are so obsessed with making sure they control your kids, and this is exactly why. And what's really going on here is that Hollywood at this point, they are so overconfident. They're so overconfident that they actually think they can get away with it. It's like they're basically just telling us what's going on, and they think they can get away with it. And it's up to people like you and me and other good Americans who embrace the spirit of 1776. It's up to them to make sure that they don't get away with it. They have to stand up and do what's right, and that's just the way it is. So yeah. And I mean, they have the steam in there, obviously, where they're like torturing little kids and they're cutting them apart and stuff like that. And he's releasing the steam. Obviously, that's supposed to be a stand-in, like an analogical stand-in for adrenochrome, which the elites they harvest it from kids so that they can stay young forever. And it's that life-giving substance. And it also has psychic abilities associated with it. So when you take it, you get high. And you're able to communicate with other dimensions and get special knowledge. But the problem is, as they say, this stuff it never works permanently, right? Like it will delay you, it'll keep you from getting old. I mean, like Joe Biden. I mean, like it's a really good example. It's like the guy's been old since he was 50, but because of the adrenochrome injections that they're giving him, you know, he's hanging along. He's hanging along a lot longer than he should have. I don't even know how his son Hunter's still alive, but I mean, he's 50 years old and he looks not half bad for being 50, 51 years old, and smoking crack literally the whole time he's an adult, and he still looks like most guys at 38 or something like that. So I mean, he's obviously on a pretty heavy adrenochrome regimen, but it's sooner or later you can't escape. You can't escape justice. You can't escape God. He's coming after you. And the guy who knew that best was Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash. I do love me some Johnny Cash.
Don't throw that in. I don't know where that came from, but all right.
He's got the song. It's actually originally a Hank Williams song, but he redid it like twice, once in the '60s and once in the '90s.
Okay.
Well, we'll find that. We'll put it on the old show notes page.
So Daniel, I was expecting you to not like this movie.
Well,
as Snobby Bobby said, he hated this film, and you being the purist, so I need you to defend yourself, sir. I need you to tell me what you possibly even a little bit liked about this thing. I mean, it is based on Stephen King novel, and from the Wikipedia on the novel, it's pretty similar. Yeah. Obviously, there are some changes. Things are cut for time, that kind of thing. But it has the gist of the King novel. If someone were to pitch you a Shining sequel, is this a kind of how it would have gone, or what are you thinking here?
All right, so I have very convoluted and nuanced thoughts on this. I think that Kubrick's movie is genius because it has so much ambiguity and so much intention of throwing you down different rabbit holes. This one is genius in that how it reconciles both the Kubrick film and the Stephen King novels, both of them, The Shining and Dr. Sleep, because what they've done is they've melded them together, folded them together to create a film that actually is an extension of both in a way. The ending that we see in Dr. Sleep, the film, is actually the original ending of the novel of The Shining, where the Overlook Hotel burns from the overloading of the steam
boiler.
The boiler. So the Dr. Sleep novel has a slightly different ending than what we see here, but this reconciles the ending that Stephen King never got from the Kubrick film, which he said he didn't like, so much so that he made a TV miniseries version of his, which is god-awful. So I found that I was really enjoying the nostalgic homages and callbacks to the original film. It is somewhat similar, though, to the Gus Van Sant remake of Psycho, in that you're doing things as homage, but they're not quite as authentic or original because they are copies and facsimiles. They're intentional, and you're going to play a fine line whether you have completely new and unique visuals and characters or actors playing the characters, or you have like digitization to reincarnate a young Shelley Duvall or a young Jack Nicholson. So they kind of fit right in the middle, where they had the sort of essence of them, but in new actors and actresses playing those roles. And I think convincingly enough to where you see this as a sequel to The Shining as a film, but then there's enough in there from the book, the original book and the Dr. Sleep book, to satisfy King and King fans of the book. So in a way, you sort of had this like pretzel effect of continuation of both of those divergent paths from the original Shining, and you bring them back on and fold them onto themselves. And that, I think, was pretty genius. It's hemmed in, though. The genius was making that work. In the Kubrick film, the genius was exploding it out into possibility.
And in this, it was bringing it all together and having a satisfying ending.
Right. And being true enough to the source material to do it with respect and competence.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I think, isn't it King who once famously said he didn't like sequels and never wanted to do a sequel? Or is that somebody else that I'm thinking of?
I know he didn't like the Kubrick version of the film. I don't know what about sequels, because as Doc Brown, who has been a guest with us a couple of times in the past, and Alec, you know him as well, maybe not by that name, but he's a avid reader, and he was telling us how most of King's work is interrelated. There's a universe in which all these novels kind of fit. So maybe it's world building, like in the pre-show bonus content, we were talking about Tolkien being a great world builder. Maybe there's some world building there. There's It and It 2. I don't know if there's an It 2 novel.
No, it was just chopped in half. So It 1 and It 2 are both just It, but in pieces.
Okay. So I don't know, to answer your question, I'm not sure about if King has a particular take on sequels, as it were, though he does write in sort of interconnected ways in his novels.
Okay.
Alec, do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, Stephen King is a great guy. I know he comes off as like a super liberal guy on Twitter. That's really just cover, because he's actually trying to expose things. He really is. And that's why he's got all of his books, like his Dark Tower series and all that stuff. It basically is a dimension traveling demons that come along and try to corrupt humanity. He's out there. He's absolutely trying to red pill people to get people, but he has to have cover for himself. Otherwise, like, for me, the problem is it's not so much. I'm willing to take the heat. I'm willing to be out there and take the heat and be the man they come to assassinate eventually. But the problem is a lot of people hate me, right? I get that, right? Like, I really speak uncomfortable truths, and that's just the way it is. They hate my guts. They're not going to listen to me, but they might listen to somebody who they think is on their side, and I think that could be Stephen King. So he's a great guy, and a lot of this was because he did a lot of drugs back in the 80s too. Especially, he was really doing a lot of cocaine. But when he was doing a lot of cocaine, he also did some of the LSD, and that's when he got all the spiritual truths that he understood. And that's when he was able to start writing his books. And he did Tommy Knockers, and he did the Dark Tower series, and he started coming up with those ideas. And he came up with Roland, and he's got Randall Flagg as the ultimate bad guy. He's like Satan, basically, and interdimensional psychic demon, and I mean, that's where he comes up with the idea of these psychic families. He didn't actually have to come up with them. He knows that they exist because he's seen them. He's seen them when he's been, tripping on DMT or something like that, trying to get to a higher plane of consciousness. And he's met the psychic vampires, and he knows that's how they operate. And he knows that they implant themselves in the high levels of government, and that they go after the kids like this. So I'm glad that he's keeping a low profile, politically speaking, and he's able to red people that way. It's going to come back in the future. It's really going to be beneficial in the future when we understand this kind of stuff. But for right now, he's one of the good guys.
That all does make sense.
Continuing our satirical review of Dr. Sleep here, you brought up a couple of points. One is DMT, which always reminds me of Joe Rogan. And I think in pre-show, we were talking about how Rogan has really great conversations with a lot of really good guests. And
he's a really good guy, too. He's a really good guy.
Yeah. In several recent episodes, he had Alex Jones, your satirical half-twin brother, on, and that was really good. He also recently had on a very contrasting back-to-back. One episode was Alex Berenson, who was a former reporter for the New York Times, who got fired for speaking truths. And it's a really great episode. And the very next one was Sanjay Gupta, who is this smarmy CNN medical guy.
Yeah, he's absolutely well to say. He's basically been bought off. He's been bought off for 25 years.
And Rogan actually likes the guy. He stood up for him, defended him, and whatever, and thinks he's a great guy. But the contrast between those two styles of interview and the responses to the questions, totally contrasting and different. And so it's a great way to like see how true journalism versus sort of this saccharine fake journalism and how it kind of plays out. A follow-up episode to that was Michael Malice, which was just recently. And on that, he actually talks about Gupta and how he has a lot of respect for him. Joe Rogan does in talking to Malice. So those are really good episodes worth checking out. The other thing you mentioned was that King was doing a little bit of the nose candy back in the day. And he was also a pretty heavy alcoholic in the 70s and 80s. And that was when he wrote The Shining in the 70s. And his in the bonus content for Dr. Sleep, he says that when he wrote The Shining, it was about a father's descent into alcoholism and how it destroyed his family. And he felt that Dr. Sleep, which is what this same called movie is, or so named movie is to the novel, is the redemptive arc of that in the son in Danny Torrance, going through, a trough of difficult times with alcohol and then recovering from it.
Well, that's why it's so important for us to continue on with our having families and stuff like that. It's why they at least come after your families, because it's the thing that gives us not only something to look forward to or something to work for, an eternality, I guess you could say. Children, in a sense, they are dimensional beings themselves. When we birth them, they're dimensional beings because they come from the heavenly place and they come through the womb and they come out and they're spirits. So it's literally taking somebody from the heavenly place, another dimension, and through the process of the birthing process, they come out and they are now in the physical realm. So, I mean, we are all inherently spiritual, ultimate dimensional beings. That's ultimately our destiny. We're going to go be in these alternate dimensions. But that's why the elites don't want you to have kids, because when you have kids, you realize there's this spiritual dimension to your life, and you have to participate in it. You can't disconnect yourself from it the way they're trying to. They want to live forever. They want to live forever here in the physical realm, and they want to keep people from going and ascending to the spiritual realm, to the alternate dimension realm, where there's actual peace, joy, and tranquility.
All right. It's interesting you bring that up because I have the documents right here. We go to Business Insider, a story on human life span limitless, maximum age debate rages. So in the news recently, there's talk of whether humans can live beyond the traditional human lifespan. And this film, of course, we have interdimensional beings kind of doing that, feeding off of the young and gifted in this adrenochrome fashion.
Well, and it doesn't have to be adrenochrome. I mean, adrenochrome will make you live for a long time and give you special powers and give you all these insights. But, because of the influence of the elites on the degradation of our culture, they've been feeding us shit for thousands of years. And I mean, I understand. I mean, I'm a little chubby myself, but it's more of a choice. But because of that, our DNA has over time degraded. It's not to say it's irrecoverable. It can be recovered at any time if we're willing to. But the elites are definitely standing there trying to make our lives shorter, more miserable, with no children, living in a box, eating bug meat, and,
owning nothing but being
owning
happy.
nothing and being happy about it. Exactly. But it absolutely is the case. We could all live for a very, very, very long time if we wanted to. It's just a matter of getting our genetics in order. We can do it. Just start by eating right, getting your super male vitality in. Really got to do that. Stuff really. I mean, it's really worked wonders for me. I mean, I'm out of shape right now because I'm getting close to 50. But when I was 42, 43, I got in like the best shape of my life. When I was just back on Superman Vitality. There's been pictures online. I'm sure you've seen them. Good in those pictures. I mean, I look toner, more tan in like a month. It's great.
All right, spray tans do wonders.
Yeah, I don't do spray tan stuff. I mean, that stuff's toxic. That's made by the globalists.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point again, and this is not related to the film in any way whatsoever. But I've often argued that people's lifespans have been improved by the standard of living being improved by specialization, division of labor, the Industrial Revolution, the offshoots of that, people having access to hygienic, clean water, better nutritional foods, exercise, sunlight, more leisure time, things like that. And lifespans have improved, including with some, medical and traumatic medical interventions, things like that. But at the same time, we also see all sorts of stories about how we're being fed, corn syrup and vegetable oils, which are like terrible for you, and all these things that actually cause all sorts of heart and cancer issues, or potentially do, that are shortening lifespans. So I'm wondering if there's sort of this countervailing force that has improved lifespans, up into the 80s and 90s, right? I think the average age of death in the United States right now is close to 80 years old. 50 years ago, it was like 65 or 70. So there has been an improvement. Yet at the same time, there's been a lot more ingestion of chemical laced foods and less nutritious foods and things like that. So I just wonder how much better things could be had we had a more natural diet, and still having the more cleanliness and the more leisure time, more exercise, vitamin supplements, nutritious food, etc.
Taking all the good, none of the bad.
Right.
It's important to note that I mean, this has been known since biblical times. You gotta make sure that you deal with your physical waste as safely as possible. It's been around since biblical times, and I mean that's what a lot of the biblical law is. Just make sure that you maintain physical and social safety. Vaccines they can be helpful, but they're actually generally, in my opinion, a bad thing. So a really great example is everybody thinks the polio vaccine, Salk polio vaccine, stopped polio. It didn't. Chlorinating pools is what stopped polio. We started chlorinating pools because we didn't have wastewater treatment back in the 30s and 40s. Not very good stuff, anyways. So most people were just, swimming in bad water and had wastewater in it. And it was when we started chlorinating the water, when we started boiling it, when we started dealing with things. That's when we started having safe aerosolized or aerated breakdowns of fecal matter. That's when we started having actual improvements in health. The Salk vaccine helped alleviate the symptoms of polio, but it actually did not. It didn't actually cure polio. You still got polio. It's just that you had antibodies in order to deal with the symptoms. So, and then people don't know this, but there were actually bad versions of the Salk vaccine. I got the papers, and I can send you the stuff. But there were alternative competitor vaccines to the Salk vaccine, and they didn't do it right, and it actually ended up killing a lot of people, like thousands of people in one city, and paralyzing many more. And they finally got off of it. But if you were sitting there in 1954 and you were a parent, and you had the option between a couple of vaccines, you would not have known a priori or just based on any sort of knowledge that you should be taking the vaccines. Like, they were experimental back then, and some people took them and died. Right. The fact that the Salk vaccine ended up being moderately okay and even relatively successful does not mean that it's the vaccines that actually stop polio. Okay. Boiling water, chlorinating pools, aeration of wastewater. That's what did it. So, anyways, and I mean, it's amazing to me that what's being shared between this movie and is the there's actual power. There's psychic value and psychic power in the human soul. It in and of itself. It's funny. I recently, my wife, she was rewatching like this this manga series or manga series. I don't know what they're called. They're like some Japanese thing. I don't really watch it myself, but there's this thing called Full Metal Alchemist or something like that. And the whole story, I kid you not. Again, another example of the elites. They cannot keep from exposing themselves, and people know about it. The whole story is literally about like this little demon character who was summoned through satanic rituals, literally blood magic. That's the part of the story. He was summoned through blood magic. He comes from an alternate dimension, and he starts giving perverted knowledge to mankind. Now, the perverted knowledge is almost exclusively for the purpose of helping the king of this particular country to live forever, right? And he's like, I want to live forever. So how can I actually live forever? I mean, not just for a long time, like with adrenochrome or something like that, or drinking good bloods, or having whatever, like you have in Silicon Valley or something like that. But actual, like, how can I live forever? And so this demonic character who's been born through blood magic, basically says, okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to sacrifice all the people of your country, and you're going to concentrate their soul energy into a philosopher's stone, right? Just like in Harry Potter, and that's going to let you live forever. But he tricks the guy, and he actually takes it for himself, and he builds himself like a body, and he goes on, and this evil demon blood character, who he's not the star of the show, he's the bad guy. He literally goes and he makes a new country, right? This new country that the country he makes fake humans called homunculuses. And homunculus is an old Latin word, means little person. It's like the man in the eye. So you understand. So the homunculus was the reflection of a person you see when you look into somebody else's eye. You see your own reflection, and people thought that was the soul trapped inside you. And so the homunculus is actually the trapped soul. It's a trapped soul. It's really what it is. It's a trapped soul from that got trapped in the Philosopher's Stone. It gets used to make a fake person. These fake people, they were used to run the whole country. They ran the whole country for like 400 years, just for the eventual purpose of sacrificing the whole country, which is 50, 60 times bigger. They end up sacrificing the whole country through this blood magic stuff, so that the demon bad guy could absorb all their power and then eventually ascend to the plane of God and conquer God. That was the whole point of the whole show, was he wanted to conquer God. And we got the hero, the good guy who was like an alchemist, basically, who stopped him. He stopped him, and he actually ended up stopping him by sacrificing his ability to do magic. It's crazy stuff. So, but it's funny because this show is like you think of it as like a kid's show because it's like animated and all this stuff. It's actually got, in my opinion, the best. It's got the best representation of what the state is. The state exists solely for the purpose of sacrificing people so the elites can live forever. That's the way it is. It's the way it always has been. Ever since the Indus Valley Civilization. I was recently watching a video about Indus Valley Civilization, how the people who escaped from the Indus Valley Civilization, I had for a really, really long time thought that the Polynesian people originally came from like southern India or perhaps Taiwan, and they had moved their way eastward across the Pacific until they got to South America, because their genetic lineage is shared by the Incans in Peru and also in the Mayans up in Mexico. And I thought for a long time that they had sailed eastward, which is very difficult to do across the Pacific, because the Pacific, all the prevailing winds are westward to Australia. The trade winds move west. So it's very difficult to sail east across the Pacific, but you can do it. And the Polynesians are obviously really, really famous for having yams, but yams actually originated in Chile. They're like a South American thing. So I thought originally they had made it all the way east from like Taiwan, stopping off on these islands and getting to South America and then getting the yams and coming back. But actually, apparently that's not the way they went. I was confused with this because at the same time there are Polynesian-speaking people in Madagascar, right? Like in Madagascar, the language is Polynesian, and it's really, really old Polynesian, which I thought was surprising too. So apparently I got it wrong. They actually didn't go eastward across the Pacific. They went westward because it's easier to sail west. In fact, all the prevailing winds always go west. They sailed from basically the Indus Valley Civilization like 8,000 years ago. They sailed down, stopped off Madagascar, planted their stuff. They still have a Polynesian language there. They went around the Horn of Africa, went up the Atlantic, across the Caribbean. They planted off people there, some of the Taino and all that stuff. They went, became the Mayans, moved down, became the Incans. And then eventually, when there was war broke out, they sailed from Peru all the way back across the Pacific Islands and repopulated those. And it's interesting because Hawaiian is actually the language on the planet that has the smallest number of phonemes. That's basically vowels and letters and sounds and stuff like that. Whereas classic Polynesian languages, the oldest ones, have like 30 or 40, so it's a lot more. But it's still Polynesian languages. Anyways, all that is really interesting because the genetic haplotypes from the Indus Valley Civilization, you would expect them to only stay generally in like southern Iran or something like that. But no, they're actually found. Second highest concentration of them is in Peru, right? So, and somehow, we don't know when, but ancient Persians found their way to Peru and Mayan, and it's the same genetic haplotype. And the place where it's found after that is in New Zealand among the Maori. It's crazy, and as all these people share is same crazy stuff of like some they all have the same basic idea that like the reason the Mayans and the Incans and all that stuff submitted to like the white Spanish conquistadors because they thought they were gods. Everybody's heard that in their history books. It's true. And the Maori actually did it too. The reason why the Maori are all Mormons, if you didn't know, they're all Mormons, is because they had an ancient legend that white guy was going to show up and give them new truth. And in the 1850s, some Mormons showed up speaking their language and gave them a new truth. And they were like, oh my God, that's it. So anyways, yeah, crazy stuff right there. But the whole point is that the history of civilization is blood sacrifice from the state going throughout history and people fleeing blood sacrifice. It's always what it is. The state, it gets established, it starts sacrificing people en masse in order for the elites to live forever. People run away from it, they go to new civilizations, and that's it.
All right. So Alec, we gotta control you down here, like Michael Malice did with Alex on the Tim Pool show. So
Oh
we got to bring it back.
I did a little cocaine before we got on.
Yeah, we got to bring it back to Dr. Sleep. All right, but I think that might have been the director's cut version of how you tie this back into Dr. Sleep, which was about the sacrifice of the children so that these psychic vampires could live forever.
Yeah.
So thank you for that little sideline. Normally we would save content for that for bonus content, but it's perfect in this one. Thank
it's
you.
flawless,
Sometimes
flawless victory,
really
Alec.
Like I said, sometimes I really just go on. It's good that you rein me in. I mean, it really is, because sometimes I have trouble focusing. I have trouble concentrating. Like I said, when I was on Joe Rogan, I got hit in the head a few times when I was a kid. Alex and I were both there. He got hit in the head. I got hit in the head. And I was a really, really smart kid. And I guess I'm really still kind of a smart guy. But, like I have trouble concentrating. Sometimes I just go on forever. And, cocaine doesn't help.
So, Robert, bring us back to the movie a little bit. What is it? Oh, yeah, go ahead. You got something to say.
No, I was going to ask you the question. You said that you watched both versions of the film, and I wanted to hear what the differences were between the director and the theatrical.
Okay, well, going into it, I was expecting there to be additional scenes or something like that, and there was maybe one or two additional scenes, but for the most part, it was just shortening all the existing scenes down in time a bit. I think to get the runtime down for the theatrical to a more reasonable amount. Because it
wasn't a whole lot more content.
There is a little bit more. It's just bits and pieces here and there in every scene. I think every scene is probably cut just a little bit in the theatrical cut. But the red bathroom, that is a scene that is not in the theatrical, but it is in the director's cut. And they built the Overlook sets on a soundstage, and every set had to be built, shot, dismantled, and then the next set was built
in the same place. Okay,
in the same place. So the red bathroom, you see it in the bonus content, and you're like, "What? There's no red bathroom in the movie director's cut." But it's pretty amazing how much work went into creating each set. They shoot the scenes in it, dismantle, and then rebuild the next set. So they do that for the Colorado room, the hallway that the two girls are in, the apartment that they're in the Overlook that has the same, smashed doors and all that stuff. And they replay a lot of those scenes, which I felt like was kind of the cool homage that sort of immerses you back into the film. And in fact, it opens with Danny going through the hallways with the lock and key carpet and ending up at, I think, room 237, which is very similar to what happens in Psycho 2, where they open with the shower scene from the original Psycho from 1960. They replay that to bring you back into the same feeling as the original film. So they did that in Psycho 2 from 82. And they so
if you were to recommend one version, which would it be and why?
Well, I think that the Dr. Sleep director's cut version, those extensions do help. It does help to clarify that they are seeking to, the True Knot are seeking to get this white whale of a girl. This Abra is the most steam they've seen in generations. And so rather than turn her, because she would then be more powerful than even Rose the Hat, she doesn't want that. She doesn't want anyone there who could potentially usurp her power. She's clearly the leader of that group. And they also don't want to kill her and just like exploit that resource in a very short amount of time. So they're actually exhibiting time preference here, where they want to milk her like a cow and extend her life and feed on her for decades. And that
keep her as some sort of a prisoner while they... Right.
Sort of an on-demand steam, because they've been starved for steam for a long time. Like we were talking about earlier, the Netflix generation, fewer and fewer kids have shiny and or less shininess.
Right.
And so that's more spelled out in the director's cut, in that's their plan. That's Rose the Hat's and the True Knot's plan. I think that they sort of allude to it in the theatrical cut, but it's not as abundantly clear. Like they beat you over the head with it in the director's cut. Like, we want her because she will solve the problem of us not having steam. for a
So
long.
in the director's cut, did you feel the runtime? Did you feel that the extra content and the extra information was worth the added time?
I think it's a better version. I do, but I can also see why they wouldn't want to have a theatrical release of 3 hours. It's
Okay.
hard to sit still for 3 hours and keep track of a movie, and it's also something you don't want to like have to get up halfway through and go to the bathroom. And that's one of the great things. I actually mentioned this to my wife is that this came out in the fall of 2019, pre-pandemic. If this had come out like 6 months or a year later, I think it would have been maybe the 3 hour cut because it's streaming, right? And
Right.
so
Who cares
people can,
about theater
yeah,
times?
right. And then it changes the story. I think it makes it a little bit more full and more robust. And yeah, it's definitely worth watching. I don't know if you actually have access to it, because it's in the
I do
movies
not.
everywhere, but it doesn't have
Yeah.
theatrical cut or the director's cut.
Directors. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bonus in the Vudu version that I have.
Okay.
But yeah. So anyway, if you have the means, I do recommend checking it out.
Is it worth watching it a second time? Like, if I ever have the inkling of watching this film again, I would probably, if I had the means, seek out the director's cut. But is it worth it for me right now, having already watched the theatrical?
I had the same question, and I chose wisely and watched the theatrical and then the director's cut. So wife and I watched theatrical over the weekend, and then we were like, oh, there's this director's cut. You want to watch it? And she's like, yeah, sure. She liked the theatrical well enough to watch it again, and I liked it as well. Though again, I don't like it in the same way that I like The Shining. The Shining just has so much that you can read into, and I just love the craft of it. This one,
So you didn't see this movie as a betrayal in any way, because I could see some diehard Shining fans going, "Well, this is nothing like The Shining. This departure."
Well, I mean, they attempt to do the homage thing, right? So it's like the Gus Van Sant version of Psycho, where they like literally reshoot some of those scenes from the same angles and things like that. When we go back to the Overlook, you've still got that tracking shot from the helicopter with the newer vehicle, the Toyota Camry or whatever it is.
Right, but the tone and the feel is totally different.
Right, but
Didn't
it's homage.
think?
Yes, it is different. It's far creepier in The Shining. The Shining has far more sinister feel to it.
Right.
This movie, yeah, it has bad people doing bad shit or bad, whatever they are, demons, psychic vampires.
They're creepy people, but it's not like spooky scary. It's just like these are some villains out to get the good guys.
Yeah, so it loses a little bit of that luster for me. But as far as like the craft of like bringing together these disparate narratives and satisfying them all, it was pretty impressive.
You liked how it turned out. You thought this was a satisfying ending to the Shining-averse.
It does destroy one thing though, and that is the Wendy theory. Have you seen the Wendy theory?
I remember you sending me a Wendy theory video, and I said, "Seems like a bit of a reach."
I enjoyed the Wendy theory. I don't know if it was during this episode tonight or in the pre-show bonus content available for Patreon supporters, where we were talking about an alternate version of Lord of the Rings. What if Gandalf took the ring? And it spins out for a 20 or 30 minute thing, and I think it's actually pretty good. The Wendy theory,
where Wendy's the one going crazy.
Wendy's the one going crazy, and we see it from her perspective. And there are enough tells in the movie to where you could credibly say, okay, when we see it from this perspective, this is Wendy's view. And then when we see it from this other perspective, it's the alternate view that we're supposed to pick up on the initial watching of The Shining. But a lot of it had to do, if I recall, it was like furniture that's not there anymore. The light switch has been moved. Little details that a master craftsman like Kubrick probably did intentionally. Right. And so it's where Wendy's the one actually attacking Danny, but she's going crazy and is projecting that upon Jack.
Indeed.
But
then this
Sleep destroys
Sleep comes around. It's definitely Jack who was going crazy.
Right, from alcohol and the evil of the building.
Right.
And I don't know if
and
we
the
got
fact that he lived with his mom
it's really,
for a happy time after the fact of the movie.
I think it's important to remember, guys, that there is actual evil in this world, and it does physically manifest, and it can affect you on a personal, spiritual, emotional level. And I mean, it's, like I never mess around with Ouija boards and stuff like that, just for that reason. I never try to summon demons, even though I've read books on how. I refuse to do it. So I think it's important to remember that he was actually being affected. This is not just pure alcohol on his part. We've all had alcohol. We've all been drunk. We don't go that crazy. Okay, he's going crazy because he's got an actual demon trying to like possess his soul.
Okay, all right.
Right.
And that demon is manifested in the Overlook Hotel.
That's right.
And that gets a little fuzzy for me in Doctor Sleep, where they're like, well, there's the true not people, they're psychic vampires, and then there's evil places that shine, and then there's kids who shine that are feasted upon by the evil psychic vampires. But did Jack Torrance shine, or was he just affected and gone mad by the shining of the Overlook in the original The Shining?
In the book, according to the Wikipedia,
yeah.
In the Doctor Sleep book, according to the Wikipedia, it said that Jack was the original father of both Danny and he was Abra, yeah.
Oh,
so he must have been super shiny, at least a little bit.
Okay, so he's the father of Abra. That's interesting because in the movie we have a father who is not Jack by any stretch.
Right.
But in the book, I think Abra is much older. Like she grows up and she's like an adult, or when the end of the book is happening, she's not just this little kid. Okay. Like it starts off when she's a kid back in the day, and then she grows up. But anyway, something like that. I don't know. Just from reading the Wikipedia, that's all I know.
Okay, you haven't read the book.
No,
we don't do that kind of effort on this show.
Are you kidding me? I'm going to read like some 1,000-page book in 1 week.
Right.
Not going to happen.
Well, yeah, people have talked about wanting us to, review other cultural items, TV shows or video games, and I'm just like, well, the problem is a movie is like a 2-hour commitment that we can watch, 2.5, whatever, and we can talk about it. Playing a whole video game thing or watching a whole TV series or even just a whole season, far more of a commitment, or reading a whole book. So That's why we've settled for this mediocrity of what we do here.
Although I do like the idea of, if you're doing something anyway for pleasure, like if I just so happen to be reading Dr. Sleep the novel, maybe I'll come on and I'll talk about it a bit. But I don't know if you can.
And then seeing the movie,
Right. Right. But I don't think I'd ever just, I saw the movie, now I have to read the book for the that's not going to happen.
All right. So we are now at the time where we are pressed against time. Allow myself to introduce myself. So why don't we get into any final points you guys want to make before we get into giving this a score, and what's an appropriate score for, how about number of demon boxes that Obi-Wan is putting the inhabitants of the Overlook into?
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. The other one we could do is we could have bottles of Jack Daniel out of 10.
Yeah, or number of recreational vehicles in the True Knot.
Yeah, that's another good one too. Yeah, they had a lot of recreational vehicles. You think for people who are so powerful and connected,
some nice ones too.
Yeah,
at least they were nice.
So powerful and connected, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, let me get a nicer RV or something.
Wouldn't just be some gypsies in a clan of RVs. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
All right, so Robert, you got any points you want to make? Any notes you got left, or do you want to just lead off?
I just want to point out how Obi-Wan had the high ground in his battle with Rose the Hat there at the end, so that's why he won. Appreciated that little Star Wars reference. Was movie.
Defeating her satisfactory to you, or did it leave wanting?
Well, if I had,
better. I mean, he had enough shining on his own, and he should have had a little bit more She's obviously a lot more practiced, but he's a lot more powerful. So he should I don't know. And it's almost like Obi-Wan versus Anakin in the reverse, where she's Obi-Wan, she's less powerful but more practiced, and he's Anakin, he's more powerful but less practiced. I don't know, maybe. Yeah, you never know. You never know with these things.
Yeah, I would have appreciated her. I mean, she just seemed to be physically stronger, and that was about it.
Yeah.
She's hundreds of years old. She should have had some tricks. And
yeah.
Yeah. She's saying, "Well, I'm encountering this for the first time ever." It's like, okay, but you said that you've been dealing with these shining people who have been shining way more than these modern scrub shiners. So you should have come up against something similar at least, or you're practiced at dealing with shiners. These people should be. I mean, yeah, she is impressed by Danny, even though he's been dulled by the alcohol. It still just it's in age, but it felt like she should have had some abilities beyond just, hey, she's physically strong.
Yeah, and then I also found that there was a little bit of disparate power levels. Like Abra impresses her so much, like she has so much raw power compared to Rose the Hat. Yet when Rose is chasing them, they're all like, "Whoa, Rose is so badass."
Mm-hmm. So like we have to set traps for her. We got to take her to the Overlook so that other people can deal with her. If she's so strong, just smack her down. What?
Yeah, but then that's not so satisfying, I suppose, because then you don't have much of a danger.
You don't, but it makes for a cleaner narrative. Like, I understand you want to build up this big heavyweight fight at the end, and as a viewer, I want to see a big heavyweight fight at the end, but it needs to make sense, and it needs to be satisfying, and it mostly was. But I still didn't quite understand. He unleashes all the Overlook ghosts, and they just eat her right away. And then they eat him, I suppose. But then he's able to still talk to Abra.
Yeah, they take him over or something and make him go after Abra, similar to Jack Torrance went after Danny.
Yeah.
But then he can sort of like overcome it briefly, and then so he's struggling with it. He's fighting it. But that didn't happen to Rose. Though Rose is one of those Death Eater things that when she gets injured sufficiently, she evaporates, right? And does the
Right.
Which, by the way, the Crow guy, Crow Daddy, the defeat of Crow Daddy is he's not wearing a seatbelt, so he crashes the vehicle. That is sort of like surface level clever, but I think if you're this long living being living across generations, you're going to wear a seatbelt. You're going to take care of your body, because apparently they die from car accidents and falling down things and getting shot. You would think that they would be far more cautious than just an average person, knowing that otherwise they could live for generations, like hundreds of years.
Completely agree with you, sir. I thought that was a little bit cheap. Didn't make a whole lot of sense for the exact reason you just mentioned. If the risk is, it's like when a cancer patient just stops wearing their seatbelt, or start filling out, jumps out of an airplane for the first time ever, and fills out all the bucket list stuff, because
you got 6 months.
You got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
But you don't do that when you're 14 and you got your whole life ahead of you. You're more cautious.
Crazy.
You do crazy shit, but you're more cautious in that sense. Like if you think you have more to lose, you are more cautious.
Yeah. And yeah, so it felt weird to me that Crow Daddy would do such a foolish thing, because they would have, in my opinion, a higher perceived risk of physical injury, ending a much longer lifespan.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if that's the way he dies in the book. I'm always skeptical, because it probably makes more sense in the book, but maybe not.
Okay. Alec, Professional Asshole, have you read either of these books, and do you have any insight or opinion on this?
I did, and I don't remember any specific details from the books that I could add into this. It's just going out of my mind. I got so much I got to cram in there, you know, it never really. I don't really keep a whole lot anymore. I guess I'm getting old, so you know. Anyways, but yeah, I've been backing up all my books, and man, it is a chore. It's a damn chore these days. Back up books. I got even though I've gotten rid of like 600-700 volumes of books in the last couple of years, it's taken up maybe half my garage right now. My books.
Nice.
So can't even keep track of them anymore.
All right, Robert. Well, I think that was a sufficient last little point to discuss. So why don't you lead us off with the final summary and review, and give us a number of exhalations to death or a number of recreational vehicles. Take your pick.
Yeah. What is our number out of? I like entombed ghosts, and I like the idea. This movie got me to cry when he was dealing with the what was that, the Stephen King cameo when he's one of the dead guys, he's dying. I thought that was those two scenes where the two dying guys were really nice. With the cat that would hang out with the dying people. That's a real thing that actually happens, which is kind of weird. But yeah, this movie, I think it succeeded in all the ways that The Shining failed me. I appreciate your appreciation for the original Shining, if that's indeed the way you appreciate it, in the way that it can be interpreted so many different ways. And then the way this came together. I could see your point of view on that, and I enjoy that as well. But for me, as a person that really wants to emotionally connect to a film, and how the original Shining failed so miserably at that, I didn't believe for a second that was a loving family. I didn't believe for a second that the mother and father gave a shit about each other. So when the family broke up, you're like, good. These people all hate each other. You didn't get to see any of the good stuff before they went to the hotel and everything went to hell. And apparently King didn't like the movie for that same reason. So good on him. He knows how to tell a story. He's a freaking master. This movie succeeded for the most part, even though obviously it's going to be a trimmed down experience from the book. You're not going to get all the context and the nuance, but we spend a lot of time with Danny as an adult, and how rough of a time he's having with his alcoholism, and how he's trying to run away from his past and the horrors of all the things he sees. His mother dying with flies all over her face. Can you imagine seeing that all the time? Probably then he's haunted by just all the things he sees. So yeah, he's a troubled soul, and he's got these powers that he doesn't want to deal with. And then he's forced to kind of reevaluate things when he meets somebody that is in the same position that he was for the most part. And he's got these villains that he's haunted by, or that are haunting her or chasing after her. And you can understand why he kind of comes out of retirement to have one last gasp, one last showdown. And it's a very satisfying, typical kind of Hollywood 3-act structure, but there's a reason why that stuff works. And I enjoyed every minute of it. It felt like the best X-Files movie ever, without Mulder and Scully. I had a great time with it. Psychic vampires, sure, throw it in there. The Shining, whatever that is, sure, let's do it.
Dick Halloran, he's back. He was pretty
yeah,
good.
Halloran, he was fine. He was great. I enjoyed the scenes of, what was that, the Jedis talking to each other in The Last Jedi, but in this movie it was way better. Mm-hmm. Where the two Jedis were like saying, "Hey, what's up?" And then they're like, "Oh, you revealed somewhere of where you are now. That was stupid of you." And it was just way better than The Last Jedi. Now they did it. So I'm going to give this, as a satisfying conclusion to the Shining saga, the story of Danny Torrance, the Overlook Hotel, how it finally burns down at the end. Apparently it's already burned down in the book, and it's like just a hangout for the crew, the evil guys there. I don't know how that all sorts out, but in this film, I thought it was a fantastic way to end it. For the most part, minor objections aside, like we talked about. But I'm going to give this 8 solid oak ghost catching coffins. It's a lot of fun, and I would recommend it to any just movie fan, even if you've not even seen The Shining before. I don't think you need to. I think it's just a good movie that you can totally get in on. I mean, you could watch the original Shining and get a little more context, but I think this movie fills you in entirely. I don't even know if you need to see the original, but you could.
Yeah, those homage callbacks do enough to establish, I think, the story, and I think that was the point.
Yeah.
I don't know how much after Blade Runner 2049 this came out, but that was a lot of the complaints with how poorly that did, even though it was really good, was because they didn't think the audience base was big enough to have familiarity with the original.
Okay.
So it made the 2049 like less appealing.
Mm-hmm.
But in this one, you know, they kind of replay a lot of that, and they have different actresses play those roles, but they also like sort of imitate or intimate the cadence of the speech and sort of mimic how they look in some ways.
Yeah, and that didn't bother me at all. I don't know about you or anybody else, but I thought it was perfectly fine the way they did it.
I think it was the best they could have done, because anything's going to feel a little bit cheap. You know, you either change them completely or you deep fake them somehow, digitize them like Skywalker, you know, when they younged Luke for Mandalorian.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so you gave it 8 stars. Right?
8 coffins. 8
coffins.
Ghost coffins.
All right. So that's a good score. I was actually expecting you to give it a bit of a higher score. I was considering giving it an 8, but now just relative to you giving such a high score to something, I have to like it less. So
no.
I'm gonna go with 7.25 stars on this one. It is a satisfying ending to not only the Kubrick version of the movie, but also the 2 novels, from my understanding of what they are, and it made King satisfied. However, there is some talk of doing an extension of this based on Abra and her later on in life, and some other, you know, exploits related to The Shining and adrenochrome and whatnot. But we'll see. I mean, that was all talk before the global pandemic and the outsized response to that. But otherwise, a competent film with good craft in making it. Good acting. The story is straightforward enough, and it calls back sufficiently without trashing the source material or the predecessor in that I think is a cultural icon as far as horror movies go. I think that the Kubrick film stands out, and it might be one that my wife and I, we watch it almost every year. And even though we've seen the theatrical and director's cut of Dr. Sleep, we might actually make time to watch The Shining before Halloween here. So 7.25 stars from me. A valiant effort and a good way of doing the pretzel of bringing the novel and the original Shining film to a satisfactory conclusion. Working within those constraints is a bit of a genius itself, though a different level of genius than what Kubrick did in his iteration. And with that, we'll go to you, professional Alec Jones impersonator, asshole, satirical man with the plan. How are you doing over there? You got a final summary and review for us?
Yeah. So I have to go ahead and give this 9 stars, only because, or 9 coffins. You know, for dead people with the saggy titties and stuff. Because, you know, honestly, where do you find a film that's nearly this red-pilled? It's gargantuan in its scope, in its attempt. It's literally trying to expose people who are in power right now. The only other movie I can think of that's maybe, you know, on this level is the 1997 movie Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson, who totally 100% red-pilled, by the way. He's got it. He knows exactly what's going on. You know, I gotta, of course, he's a great guy. I got to try to keep my distance from him. But as much as I honestly can't think of better movies in terms of telling people what's really going on in the world, in society, how people are trying to keep you suppressed, depressed, and enslaved. They want to keep you enslaved. And yeah, I mean, who's doing it better? Who is revealing these truths better? You get a few documentarians out there, and they're great guys, but who in Hollywood is doing this? Right? They almost all end up dying. The guy, maybe the other one, and was American Made with Tom Cruise. If you saw it, it's about Barry Seal, guy was doing Iran Contra. But even then, it's not talking about the real scope. I mean, that's just talk about typical political, electioneering and engineering and so on and so forth. That's just getting into that. We're talking about the actual psychic, spiritual elements that are attacking us on a daily basis, and who's doing that in Hollywood? So I got to give it to these guys. Nine coffins.
All right, yeah, very good. I think another one that had a lot of maybe telling red pilling is Eyes Wide Shut, which was another Kubrick film that we did a while back. Though he died mysteriously before he had final cut on that one. But he was old, things can happen. We also did American Made a couple of years ago, and that was a pretty good movie and a very good episode. So I'll find that and put it on the old show notes page down below, along with all your prior appearances there, Alec, professional asshole Jones in the satirical sense, fake half brother to Alex Jones. So people can find that at lastnighter.com/200 for show notes and more, and also Patreon bonus content at lastnighter.com/Patreon. And Robert, next week we are going to continue the horror theme, and we're going to do John Carpenter, and there's a lot of options we could choose from.
Oh, yeah, we got all kinds of good stuff.
The one we landed on is Prince O' Darkness, mostly because it's free on the old Peacock network. We talked about Peacock last week, where you just watch a couple of ads and you can watch the full-on movie. And what we do is we turn the volume all the way down, dim the screen. It says, all right, 300 seconds of ads, and then you can watch the movie. So we just 300 seconds of boop, silence, and then we watch the movie. So Prince of Darkness, and hopefully, I haven't nailed this down yet, but hopefully the guest will be the indomitable Wilson Hader himself, Prof CJ of the Dangerous History podcast, who also happens to be a big John Carpenter fan, as was our prior guest, Snobby Bobby of the Not For Everyone podcast. He's a big Carpenter fan as well. So Carpenter fans all around, a sandwich of them, with the meat being professional asshole tonight in our sandwich. So thank you, Alec, for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you can stick around a little bit longer for, what do we call it? We call it Kathleen Turner Overdrive, but what does your brother Alex call it when he's doing the bonus content, continuing after the break?
Training Porn Central.
That works too. All right, so people can find the show notes for this at lastnight.com/200, and we will see you guys all next week for Prince of Darkness, and stick around for some Kathleen Turner Overdrive right after this. And with that, we'll say good night from last night, everyone. Peace out.